So we run it a whole life quite a bit, and it can be a great product for the right type of person. One thing that a lot of our advisors lose sight of is that if you took X amount of clients off the street, a lot of them will say whole life to their advisor or just in speaking socially with other people, et cetera. But the key is that they refer to all permanent life insurance as whole life. It's probably the oldest type of insurance that's been around, and that's probably a reason for it. But the key is, as advisors, make sure that you and your client are talking about the same thing. And there's some positives and some negatives about whole life. So we don't want them to cast what you're talking about into what they think they know about permanent life insurance. So that's a big deal. Charles always uses a great analogy when it comes to some of the advantages of whole life, and I'll let him cover that.
Yeah, and so whole life and IUL, they have more in common than they do that are not in common. And why I say that is both of them have strong cash values. Both of them have strong death benefits, but there's a way in which the whole life, the way that cash value grows is in the form of a dividend. And so you get a couple of guys like this, and we get together and we say, okay, the dividend this year is going to be 5.2. And you just got to trust JT and I that we're going to be making the best decision on your behalf. With an IUL, there's also a trust me element, and it's called an index, a derivative. And so you're going to measure 1 point in the market, and then usually 12 months to 24 months down the road, you're going to take another measurement. And that's where, when we work with a lot of tax attorneys, CPAs, true investors, they like that clarity because they can see what were the benchmarks that credited this policy, not what did a couple of people decide behind closed doors. So,
and one of the things too is that a positive of whole life is steady eddy returns. So very linear, conservative growth, typically net around that 3.5% to 4% range, which can be good. But there becomes a point when you're taking money out of that policy where the loan provisions, the loan rates, getting money out is a lot more difficult. There's not really any such thing as a true withdrawal. So Charles, give them the ship in your basement.
Yeah. So one of our dearest advisors, he said an analogy one day in a board meeting that I'll never forget. He said, whole life is building this beautiful wooden ship in your basement, and we get done with it and we high five and we want to break the champagne over the bow, and guess what? We can't get the damn thing out of the basement. And so that's where the whole life policy, where it suffers. And don't get us wrong, we do plenty of whole life. We do a lot of it in split funded defined benefit plans, but in the world of accumulation, tax-free income, there's just better investments these days. There's better ways to do it than there was 20, 30, 40 years ago.
And going back to the ship example, I mean, it accumulates well at a linear, great, rate of return that a lot of people look for. But the problem is getting the money out of that accumulation vehicle. And that's where, in my opinion, there's some shortfalls. And that's again, the whole analogy of building the boat and then getting the boat out of the proverbial basement.